Hello, good evening, and welcome to the War Room. Some of you may have heard this before. Some of you may even want more volume. Some of you are wondering who the hell is making all that noise.
I can tell you one time.
That would be Jimmy Screech, aka Jimmy James of the New Watch podcast.
Go grab the guns.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one time. This day belongs to Washington.
Yeah, he does that really well. Really, really well. Should I just let the whole thing play out? I think so. It's almost over. Yep. No, actually. But, I don't know if you heard the intro, but this is the War Room. Today is day 121. 4 months to the day that this all began. And the intro you heard was a special request by me because I found that the New Watch podcast intro was very catchy, and I liked it. And I thought, you know, he's got a real knack for this thing. So I very graciously asked him. I said, could you do something for me for the War Room? And he was like, I gotcha. And by the end of the day, that's what I got. There's been 2 iterations of that intro. I heard it, I liked it, but I asked him to tweak the gains a little bit. And he very graciously obliged, and so now it's the intro to the show. I used to use like Metal Gear's NES theme song, which someday maybe I'll go back to that because I like doing those, but he put in the work and I really enjoy it. And he said that he wants to make a second one, and I told him that that may be something I would look into because there may be a second season of the War Room, so to speak. For those of you who don't know, I have a funny feeling that Russia has just won the war in Ukraine today. And I know that sounds outlandish, but I have a theory on that. And I guess since my co-hosts aren't here yet, despite one being in the chat, I'll share that with you. So this morning, while we were in the chat, on the regular part of the Discord, we had this discussion, and I said, "Yeah, I think Russia just won the war in Ukraine," and everyone sort of got really quiet. And I said, "Well, let me tell you why. Because the entire world media circus right now, today, is screaming bloody murder or praising it. The Supreme Court decision today for the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which." I'm not going to delve into it too deep because that's not what this show is about. But let me put it to you this way. 95% of this country have lost their minds over what happened today because they don't understand what's going on. They think that what happened today was a national ban. They're wrong. what happened today, just so I can just summarize this, is the Supreme Court basically said, this isn't our bag. This isn't in the Constitution. This has nothing to do with us. And anything that is not in the Constitution, as of the 10th Amendment, says that if it's not expressly written in there, then it's up for the states to decide. So the great American experiment just turned into like the presidential election. It's 50 individually decided mandates on the same subject. That's basically all they're saying. They're like, you guys make up your own minds. This isn't our bag. And people are just losing their minds over it. Well, a lot of the world has adopted or tweaked or formulated an opinion based on Roe v. Wade to dictate pro-choice or pro-life laws in their countries. So, just perusing around global news in several countries, namely Australia, Japan, Korea, Turkey, Istanbul, Doha, which is in the UAE. I've just kind of touched on a few. And what I had found is they're all covering the abortion thing. Like, they stopped talking about Ukraine. The entire world stopped talking about Ukraine. Because all of their abortion laws are based off of ours. And because ours supposedly changed today, that's what they're all talking about. And if you stop talking about Ukraine, then Ukraine's not under a microscope anymore. Which means Putin is going to get away with whatever he wants to do. Ah, one of my co-hosts is here. Let me drag him in. Well, there you go. So, I jokingly said that the war in Ukraine ended today, or that Russia won it, because the world will stop noticing it because the world is covering other things. It was that. In this country, it was that. It was the gun control bills. It was the Supreme Court decision basically striking down May issue. It's monkeypox is not even a factor. So, like, there's a lot of distractions going on right now. And don't you find it really funny that the politicians that we have been demanding answer for the border crisis and the energy crisis and inflation and name your thing here didn't show up until today? Like the AOCs of the world, the vice president knee pads, like they didn't come out and opine on anything or offer solutions to anything until today. This was the most important thing in their itinerary for the last 6 months, despite the fact that our border is a sieve with tens of thousands of people crossing over every day. It is a multinational criminal invasion. But hey, they'd rather talk about human veal. What the fuck, right? Let's talk. Today's show's actually brought to you partly and sponsored by veal and ragu tomato sauce because of the news of today. And I was going to jokingly post little pictures of like the baby meatloaf and all that other stuff today, but I thought, no, I'm not really talking about those things. But I didn't want to completely not talk about any of it. Anyway, I see Jimmy's here. Good to see you. Thank you for your intro. We played it in its entirety. But anyway, no, the war in Ukraine is not over. I was speaking in hyperbole, but I think that because of the recent news of the day here in the United States, there's going to be a bit less coverage. So anyway, let me introduce my co-host. This is Scott. He's our tradesman up in the great Northeast, up in New Hampshire.
Yep.
Good evening to you.
Evening.
I was just a hair late. It's not because of show prep. I had to eat. I'm hungry. And for those of you who don't know, I am now tending to my 5th litter of Yorkshire Terriers. Let me just point out that I was not privy to the conversation or the actions of said Yorkshire Terriers for the last 4 litters. I did my part, I did my due diligence, and I live with idiots who are irresponsible. So now I have a 5th litter of Yorkshire Terriers. And mom is doing fine, and puppies are doing fine. They're very small, though. Like, they're about the size of 3/4 of a Twinkie, maybe even half a Twinkie. Tiny. And for the first time ever, I finally got a litter where the females outnumber the males. So, Evie is the daughter of my breeding pair, and going by the Book of Animal Husbandry, Evie's dad, I think, docked. I don't know else how to say it. But she had a litter of 3, and I had 2 females and 1 male this time. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, I don't want to get into animal husbandry because it wasn't even planned. But she's doing okay. She's getting her postnatal vitamins, and she's getting bowls of Angus roast beef shavings and Swiss cheese and blueberry muffin every morning for breakfast. So she's doing good. And her mom, Cleo, my dog, she's been incredible. Like, Evie started delivering 2 days ago, and Cleo, her mom, she jumped into the whelping box and was helping her daughter clean the puppies. Which at first I thought, oh, that's really cool. But then I was like, wait a minute. Puppies are born blind and deaf. They only have the sense of smell. I don't want to confuse them with 2 dog smells. So I took Cleo out of the box. But she's been hanging out in the room on my bed, looking down at the whelping box all day, watching her daughter and now her granddaughters, whatever. So she's been very attentive, which is cool. It's really neat. I've never seen anything like this. Like, the joke, "it takes a village," is sort of in my head, but they're dogs, whatever. It's cute though. And they're all healthy and they're all happy. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Let's see, what else can I update you with? Got my polymer 80 lower and about to buy my second one and start buying all the parts. For those of you who don't know, there's a potential ban coming down soon. Maybe. So I built my first AR years ago, just as a technical exercise to say, hey, I did it. I'm doing the same thing right now with a Glock 19 polymer 80 frame, but I'm going to build 2 of them identical. And I will do a video on that once it's finished, but what I can tell you is they're not stock, not even in the least. And by the time I'm done building both, it will cost me roughly what it would have cost me to build or to buy one Glock 19 and ever so slightly modify it. So value for money is definitely way up there also. But I think you'll all be happy with how it comes out because thanks to Scott, I'm going to get this holster that looks like the one Nicolas Cage had in Face Off. But instead of 1911s, I'll have 2 Glock 19s compensated wild as hell and ambidextrous because I'm going to have a left-hander and a right-hander. But to keep things simple, I'm going to build them both ambidextrous. That way I don't have to sit there and look at which one's which. It's going to cost me a little extra, but hey, buy once, cry once. Okay, so all that aside, I went from 2 girlfriends to 1 girlfriend to 3 girlfriends, back down to 2, down to 1, and as of a couple days ago, 0, because I'm just sick of their shit. I got tired of it, so I'm just like, you know what? I was better off with nobody. No, Nicolas Cage had 2 gold-plated 1911s. I want to say I want to say they were 38 Supers, but that would just get Jaime all excited. But anyway, he's not
Oh,
here.
yeah, that would.
He's not here, so we had this riveting discussion today. I can't even talk about it because it sounds racist. Anyway, let's see. Fine Ape says he got a 12-inch 9mm AR barrel, and he's going to ream it out to 357 Sig. So you would know this better than I. So I'm going to go ahead and just ask. You're taking a 9mm barrel, and you're going to remachine the chamber to 40 Smith & Wesson neck down to 9, which is essentially what a 357 Sig is. I think it'll be just
Why?
fine. No. I think it'll be just fine because 9mm AR barrels are built like tanks. They're so thick that I don't think he's compromising anything. Like they literally make the Moriarty 10mm is just a punched out, 9 barrel that they had. They punched it out to 10 and rebored it or whatever. So I'm going to assume that the Finest of Apes has the machine capabilities to do this. So one of these days, if you would be so gracious as to spare some of your time, I would like to send you a M1 paratrooper carbine barrel blank. And I would like you to mill that out to 5.7 by 28. If it's not too much trouble. I have this crazy fantasy of building a M1 paratrooper carbine with the wire folding stock in 5.7. So I'll hit you up on that later. Because I really want to build that. Other than that, let's see. I'm trying to get you guys caught up in last week. So, had girlfriends, ditched girlfriends. Had dogs, dogs had puppies. That was weird. Air conditioner in my car kind of crapped out. It's been 107 degrees plus every day for the last 2.5 weeks. It was 110 today. Pwnery's AC doesn't work after 4 p.m. Works great at 9 a.m. Useless after 2 p.m. 120 degree air hitting your face when it's 110 outside, not the best feeling. Yeah. So anyway, I'll be buying a compressor, a vacuum pump, a new set of gauges, a dryer, and I've got a really, really cool Pwnery Tinkers car video for when I do that conversion. Because I happen to find a refrigerant that is 100% cross-compatible with R134A, but I could for the price of 1 can of R134A, I could buy 6 cans of this stuff. So I'll share that with you guys because I think it's going to be super cool. He just got the lathe when he was down in Tulsa. Let's see if I don't mangle this barrel fridge. That's fine. This is just something I always toyed with the idea of, if you make yours a reality, then I'd love to make mine a reality and then plug you for it. That'd be great. That'd be cool. Anyway, Scott, did I mention to them before about my snafu?
No.
Okay, I'm not going to do it then. I'm not going to mention it then. But I just wanted to let you guys know that once upon a time, Pwnery had all his AKs on the wall. Something happened, all the AKs disappeared from the wall out of paranoia, and they're back on the wall. And it was so nice to put them back there because I missed them. And I'm looking at my RPK right now. And I'm just like, ooh, it's so nice. I just want to touch you and shoot you. Anyway. Sorry, I'm getting weird. It's my allergy meds. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. So anyway, welcome back to the War Room, guys. And I know that I used to do these every day, and I miss doing it every day. Honestly, I do. Unfortunately, the stories and the updates do not come every day. I have a source that could give me updates every day, but I have very carefully read through their stories for the last month, and there's too much questionable bias in there that I'm going to stick with my other sources. As you can see, the scroller at the bottom is up to date. I very meticulously watch that. And so day to day, you didn't see very many changes, but when I do this week to week, the changes are substantial. So the good news is Ukraine has been very busy still, very diligent. They sunk another boat. I don't even know what day that happened because it never hit my feed. But now there's 14 Russian artificial reefs in the Black Sea. How generous of them.
Hmm.
Anyway, um, I guess let's go ahead and get into the stories because I don't want to keep you guys too long. Let's see if we can get this done in the next 39 minutes to give you a nice 1 hour wrapped up show. Please tell me the AKs didn't have a great fall from atop that wall. Oh no, on the contrary, sir. Uh, the mounts that I used on my wall can support 300 pounds, and my mounts only hold 4 rifles. So
His AKs aren't that heavy.
they're not that heavy. The RPK fully loaded with the drum weighs about 22 pounds. But the GF4, I only put 30 rounders in it. The AKP, I only run those Fake-alites. They don't weigh that much. And my KP9, granted, after I put all the Zenico stuff on there, it is pretty heavy for how small it is. It's like carrying a brick of fruitcake Christmas time, you know? It's like the size of a mailbox, but it weighs as much as, I don't know, a car with a tire and a rim on it. Yeah, one of those. It's heavy. It's like a English bulldog in a way. Stumpy and heavy. Either way. I am not done with the AK acquisition quest, I guess is a good way to put it. But I will not be getting a Dragunov anytime soon. Not until KUSA builds one and offers one. Because I ain't paying FA or HD18 prices. Fuck that. And I can't get a PSL for what my friend originally offered it to me 10 years ago, so fuck that too. But in the short-term future, I think the next AK I'm buying... I had this plan to get a WBP Fox, but I don't think I'm going to pursue that anymore. The GF4 has been very good, but I will be building the Fallout 4 Problem Solver AK, which means it is going to have a folding stock that is made out of a D-ring shovel handle. So that's going to be a really fun build. And I already got my Cerakoter near my shop at work to go ahead and commit to doing the finish on it. So it's going to look trashy, but it's going to be trashy on purpose. Let's see, what else? Oh, and I'm going to get a 74 eventually. I don't know why, because 545 is perilously expensive, but, you know, got to round out the collection, right? So, good evening to you. Jimmy, I know you're there. Fine Ape, obviously I know you're there. Randy, I see that you are there. And Shady Hill is here. I'm missing one of my other regulars, but their name escapes me at the moment. But they'll be back, I'm sure. So, this new format covers the week. So we're going to go from day 116 to day 121. And this time I got the order correctly, so we'll start with day 116, which would have been Father's Day last Sunday. And so, we'll start with that photo here. There you go. Sorry about my sinuses. Something just happened right before we went on air. Allergies. Nearly 4 months after Russian forces invaded Ukraine. Now, bear in mind, today is the 4th month to the day, so they were leading up to this. Nearly 4 months after Russian forces invaded Ukraine, NATO is now warning that the war could drag on for years. Nobody knows.
Yeah. Frank?
Nobody knows. We must prepare for the fact that it could take years. We must not stop supporting Ukraine, even if the costs are high, not only for military support, but also because of rising energy and food prices. This came from NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. He did an interview with, I believe, a German newspaper. It's called Bild am Sonntag. Anyway, if Putin learns that this or from this war that he can simply carry on as he did after the 2008 war in Georgia and the occupation of Crimea in 2014, then we will clearly have to pay a much higher price, he added, referencing food and gas prices that have surged in the wake of the war. Sidebar, that line just fed into Joe Biden's bullshit excuse of why gas prices are high here. Just keep that in your back pocket. Some top U.S. officials predicted just weeks before the invasion that Ukraine's capital of Kyiv would fall in just 72 hours once Russia had invaded. However, Ukrainian forces have put up fierce resistance, added by tens of billions of dollars worth of defense and military aid from the West. Stoltenberg said that a new package of arms is on the way for Ukraine pending a NATO summit in Madrid later this month. The NATO allies are supporting Ukraine financially with humanitarian aid and, last but not least, military equipment. In addition, the NATO summit, to which I have invited President Zelenskyy, will adopt a comprehensive aid package for Ukraine. For now, it's about helping Ukraine fight for its existence against Putin's brutal invasion. After Russian forces pulled back from Kyiv in April, fighting had coalesced around the eastern Donbass and Luhansk regions, where Ukrainian forces are trying to hold off an offensive for the industrial city of Sibirozenesk. With more modern weapons, the probability increases that Ukraine will be able to drive Putin's troops out of the Donbass region again. Zelenskyy visited frontline forces in the south on Saturday, so last Saturday, where Ukraine is defending key Black Sea port cities like Mykolaiv and Odessa. It is important that you are alive. As long as you live, there is a strong Ukrainian wall that protects the country. Zelenskyy told these to the soldiers in Odessa as he handed out medals for their heroic service. Now, I left a side note on this story. And it says, we need to discuss Article 5. So I guess that means you and me, Scott, because I thought there would be more people here panel-wise. But we need to discuss Article 5 with the audience. And I think I may have mentioned this before, but let's expand on it anyway in case we didn't. Article 5 states that an aggressor country attacking NATO or its allies is an attack against all of NATO and its allies, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a nutshell, that's basically what it is. You hit one, you're attacking all, which means you will be forfeit to the destruction levied against you by all. So every time that this came up, everyone would stop just short of stepping foot or flying into the airspace of Ukraine because the West saw it as provocatory to the Russians. Oh, we don't want to fly into Ukraine because that would provoke the Russians. That was kind of like the repeating theme of this entire conflict. Oh, let's not provoke the Russians. Need I remind everybody that the Russians, since this began, 4 months to the day, they are the provocateurs. They are the invaders. They are the enemy. They are the attacker. Who cares if you offend them? They're the ones who are unwanted guests, right? Ukraine is constantly asking for assistance to push out unwanted guests and have invited neighbor nations into their country to help push the invader out. So my question is, and it's been like this for a while now, you may or may not have heard me say this before. Why isn't anyone calling Russia's bluff? If you want to end this now, expediently, who's to say an entire combat flight of Polish Air Force crosses into the border and liquidates every Russian plane in the area? Because Ukraine would not complain about the assistance of Poland doing that. However, if a Russian plane shoots down a Polish aircraft over Ukraine, it doesn't matter because they didn't shoot down a Ukrainian plane in Ukraine. They shot down a Polish plane. It doesn't matter where you shot it down. You still attacked a NATO ally. You still violated Article 5. You see, Article 5 doesn't say that you can't be in the country of the nation being invaded and then have the protections of Article 5. Like, they should push everything they've got, like World Poker Tour, all in, shove the whole stack of chips into Ukraine to show Russia that all these people are all in. Do you want this smoke? And one of two things is going to happen. The Russian bear cushes and turns around with his stubby little tail between his fat little legs and goes home and hopes that the ICC doesn't crack down or chase them into Moscow and drag Putin's ass out. Okay? They could do that. Or Russia uses a nuke, which, by all accounts, would just expedite the inevitable anyway. So, Russia drops a nuke in Chernobyl, where the Polish army had moved in to help. Article 5 has been violated. The rest of the world condemns Russia for using a low-yield nuclear device. And that gives the rest of the world legal precedence to start bombing Moscow. Now, some of you are going to say, well, I have just accelerated the aggression. Have I, or have I shortened the war? Because once upon a time, there were world leaders and talking heads having a very similar discussion, and Harry Truman goes, I got a nuclear bomb. I'm going to end this shit right now. Right? Could this last years? Yeah, if we keep letting it last years. Could we just call their bluff? Could we put, I don't know, the sea wolf into the Black Sea and make more Russian artificial reefs? Yes. How are they going to know we were there? Silent service. What if the Polish Air Force says, enough is enough? What if NATO says, enough is enough? They're not a NATO nation, but you know what? They're under the protections of our blanket now. Your move, Skeletor. Right? Why don't they do it? Because they don't want to, do they? They have known for over, a year? More than a year. That Russia was going to invade. Invasion was inevitable. How do you stop Russia from invading? You expedite their entry into NATO. Oh, you're going to invade Ukraine? Well, now Ukraine's a NATO nation. You sure you want to push that agenda now? That's all they had to do. It was a symbolic gesture. Sign some paperwork. Boom, Ukraine is in NATO. Why the pageantry? Why the delay? Why stretch out the inevitable?
Because there's no profit in it.
Yep. Yep. It was never about the human toll, was it? There's something wrong with that. But hey, That's why I'm not the one in charge. Because if I was, this war would have been over already. This war would have been over before it even started. Seriously. Like, there would have been an Iron Dome in Ukraine before one Slav stepped across the border. But didn't do it. Dicked around. Didn't think. Let's just say that the world was naive and just didn't think that Putin had it in him. I mean, wasn't Crimea enough proof? Wasn't Syria enough proof? Wasn't Georgia and South Ossetia enough proof? Are we being led by idiots? That's a rhetorical question. Moving on. Because that took way too long. Sorry. Okay, so next story, still Sunday. Here you go. In an uplifting Father's Day message Sunday, Ukrainian President Zelenskyy posted 10 photos of parents and children set against the grim backdrop of war, praising fathers who, quote, protect and defend what is most precious to them. There are scenes of childbirth as a man and woman look towards a swaddled baby in what appears to be a hospital room where the spackled walls show scars of fighting. In another, a man lifts a child over the fence towards a woman with outstretched arms on a train platform. Did you notice that there's only 2 genders in Ukraine? Sorry, I probably should have said sidebar first. Anyway, just putting that out there. Being a father is a great responsibility and a great happiness, Zelenskyy wrote in English text that followed the Ukrainian text on Instagram. It is strength, wisdom, and motivation to go forward and to never give up. He urged his nation's fighters to endure for the future of your family, your children, and therefore the totality of Ukraine. His message came as 4 months of war in Ukraine appeared to be straining the morale of troops on both sides, prompting desertions and rebellion amongst officers' orders. NATO's chief warned the fighting could drag on for, quote, years. Combat units from both sides are committed to intense combat in the Donbass and are likely experiencing variable morale. This came from Britain's defense ministry for its daily assessment. I used to post those, the Ministry of Defense things. They're not posting them like they used to, which means even they have become sort of disconnected from this over time. Ukrainian forces have likely suffered desertions in recent weeks, the assessment said, but added that Russian morale highly likely remains especially troubled. It said cases of whole Russian units refusing orders and armed standoffs between officers and their troops continue to occur. Apparently, there's no clean translation into Cyrillic that the beatings will continue until morale improves. It said, separately, the Ukrainian main intelligence directorate released what it said were intercepted phone calls in which Russian soldiers complained about frontline conditions, poor equipment, and overall lack of personnel, according to a report by the Institute for the Study of War. That's headed by General Jack Keane, by the way. In an interview published on Sunday in the German weekly Bild am Sonntag, NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said that nobody knows how long the war could last. We need to be prepared for it to last for years. Well, he would like that, wouldn't he? He also urged allies not to weaken support for Ukraine, even if the costs are high, not only in terms of military aid, but also because of the increase in food and energy prices. You're going to notice there's a lot of overlap between stories. It's just how the flow of this timeline works. In recent days, Gazprom, the Russian gas company, has reduced supplies to 2 major European clients, Germany and Italy, the Axis. In Italy's case, energy officials are expected to huddle this week about the situation. The head of Italian energy giant Eni said on Saturday that with additional gas purchased from other sources, Italy should make it through the coming winter. But he warned Italians that restrictions affecting gas use might be necessary. How's that Green New Deal working for you? Sorry, I had to throw that in there. Germany will limit the use of gas for electricity production amid concerns about possible shortages caused by a reduction in supplies from Russia. The country's economy minister basically announced this on Father's Day. Germany has been trying to fill its gas storage facilities to capacity ahead of the cold winter months, So basically, there's squirrels gathering nuts for the winter. Economy Minister Robert Habeck said that Germany will try to compensate for the move by increasing the burning of coal, a more polluting fossil fuel. It's bitter.
Funny how it works, huh?
Yeah. Falling back on what they know works. Imagine that. It's bitter, but it's simply necessary in this situation to lower gas usage, he says. Stoltenberg stressed, though, that the cost of food and fuel are nothing compared to those paid daily by the lives of Ukrainians dying on the front line. Oh, you magnificent humanitarian bastard. What are you complaining about being cold in the winter? These people are dying! Well, whose fault is that? And why aren't you doing anything about it to stop it faster? Oh, that's right. You don't want it to end, do you? Because it gives you airtime on camera. I swear, the dude looks like a male model who should be doing, like, watch commercials, not leading NATO. I probably should have sidebarred that too. Sorry. Anyway, Stoltenberg added what's more, if Russian President Putin should reach his objectives in Ukraine, like when he annexed Crimea in 2014, we will be forced to pay an even greater price. Well, you've got the power to stop it, buddy. What are you going to do about it? Britain's defense ministry said that both Russia and Ukraine... there's my other panelist. Good evening, Terry. Stoltenberg added what's more, if Russian President Vladimir Putin should reach his objectives in Ukraine, like when he annexed Crimea... Oh, I already said that part. Britain's defense ministry said that both Russia and Ukraine have continued to conduct heavy artillery bombardments on axes to the north, east, and south of the Sibirozenesk pocket, with little change in the front line. Stalemate. Luhansk Governor Serhiy Haidai said on Telegram Sunday, it is a very difficult situation in Sibirozenesk, where the enemy in the middle of the city is conducting round-the-clock aerial reconnaissance with drones, adjusting fire and quickly adjusting to our changes. Now, while that might be true, pay attention to the scroller and look at how many UAVs have been shot down. They've been very busy. Anyway, Russia's defense ministry claimed on Sunday that Russian and separatist forces have taken control of Metolkin, a settlement just east of Sibirozenesk. Bakhmut, a city in the Donbass, is 33 miles southwest of the twin cities of Lysychansk and Sibirozenesk. They're really challenging me with all this. Where fierce military clashes have been raging. Every day, Russian artillery pummels Bakhmut. But Bakhmut's people try to go about their daily lives, including shopping in markets that have opened again in recent weeks. In principle, it can be calm in the morning, said one resident. The shelling starts at about 7 or 8 in the evening. Still, he says, that it's been pretty calm in the last 10 days or so. That guy's name was Oleg Drabolnikov, and he's a merchant in those little market areas. So who better to ask than somebody who actually goes to work every day in that? You can still buy food at small farmers markets as well. This came from... Oh, this is the same guy, Drabolnikov. It's not a problem. In principle, educational institutions like schools or kindergartens, they're not working due to this situation. The institutions moved to other regions, so there's not much work here. Ukraine's east has been the main focus of Russia's attacks now for more than 2 months. On Saturday, Zelenskyy made a trip south of Kyiv to visit troops and hospital workers in the Mykolaiv and Odessa regions along the Black Sea. He handed out awards to dozens of people at every stop, shaking their hands and thanking them again and again for their service. Zelenskyy, in a recorded address aboard a train back to Kyiv, vowed to defend the country's south. "We will not give away the south to anyone. We will return everything that's ours, and the sea will be Ukrainian and safe." He added, "Russia does not have enough missiles as our people have and desire to live." He also condemned the Russian blockade of Ukraine's ports amid weeks of inconclusive negotiations on safe corridors, so millions of tons of siloed grain can be shipped out before approaching the new harvest season. In other attacks in the south, Ukraine's Southern Military Operational Command said Sunday that 2 people were killed in the shelling of the Galitsyn community in the Mykolaiv region, and that shelling of the Bashtanki district is continuing. I actually read that in real time perfectly. Ha! Anyway, Russia's defense ministry said seaborne missiles destroyed a plant in Mykolaiv city where Western supplied howitzers and armored vehicles were once stored. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has expressed concerns that a bit of Ukraine fatigue is starting to set in around the world. I would agree. A bit of fatigue for a conflict that has been stuck in stalemate because nobody wants to push the issue to a conclusion has led to less and less stories and less attention given to the nation because there's no stories coming out of it. So I think he would be correct. He says it would be a catastrophe if Putin had won. He'd love nothing more than to say, "Let's freeze this conflict. Let's have a continued ceasefire," a day after his surprise visit to Kyiv, where he met with Zelenskyy and offered continued aid and military training. Western supplied heavy weapons are reaching the front lines, but Ukraine's leaders have insisted for weeks that they need more arms and that they need them faster. Well, nothing would get them faster than delivering them in country by the very people who are supplying them to you. Just a thought. Instead of giving you MiG-29s, why don't the Polish Air Force just fly them in? Just a thought. Anyway, moving on. We are now at Monday, day 117. And I have this photo for you. I think it's huge. The U.S. continues to pledge and ship weapons to help Ukraine defend its territory, but delays that keep those weapons from reaching the front lines quickly have handed Russia an advantage as it seeks to capture the Donbass. General Jack Keane, remember that name earlier? Head of the Institute for the Study of War, stressed that Ukraine is at a tipping point and requires more weapons in order to push back against the Russian advantage. The Russians have had the advantage because the number of guns they have in the ranges are... Wait, let me reread that. The Russians have the advantage because of the number of guns they have in the ranges that they have. Keane says this during his interview. The Ukrainians have the skill. They've got the will. They've got the number of people to do it. But what they need is the weapons with the range and reach to do it back. President Biden in the past month announced 2 tranches of weapons and aid for Ukraine. The latest, a $1.2 billion package, includes artillery, coastal defense weapons, ammunition, and advanced rocket systems. A good portion of those weapons come from the Department of Defense inventories, meaning that the department will announce packages before they have located, inspected, and shipped the arms. Analysts broadly thought that Russian President Vladimir Putin only aimed to capture the Donbass region, but Russian forces tried to take Kyiv and other major cities in a single decisive blitz. The invasion struggled as the Russian military faced a number of setbacks, including significant logistics issues. But now that Russia shifted its objectives and has focused only on securing the Donbass region, it has improved its capability to wage war, with faster supply lines and better range for its heavy weapons. A former defense official was quoted as saying that some of these reports indicate that the weapons are just not getting to the Ukrainians quick enough. Sidebar. Foreign aid of military weapons is a process that generally takes months
Or
because,
years.
yeah, because they have
If
to,
they're major weapon systems, anyways.
yeah, because they have to identify what they have in inventory, what they have that's compatible with the military that needs it, to limit the number of retraining hours necessary for them to use it. So, like, for instance, we wouldn't send a Patriot missile battery to Russia because they don't use Patriot missiles. So what we have to do is we take an inventory of what we have, we run it up against an inventory of what the nation in need has and uses, and then we have to cross off the list everything that they don't already use. That's a tedious process. And then, once they got that list whittled down, they say, well, this is close enough. We could probably get them up to speed in a week. We could send a couple of CIA operatives or military leaders to sort of train them up on it. So then they have to decide, can they use this in short order, or is this going to take a major monthly campaign to train everyone, or retrain them, or the maintenance crews, or the logistics guys? So, yeah, this process takes a long time. We have streamlined that process from years or months down to sometimes days and weeks. So to say that it's not getting there quick enough, in all honesty, it's not fair, I guess, to say that, because it is monumentally faster than the normal process. But it's still not quick enough for the needs of the nation in need, because it never will be, ever. You can never get weapons to a nation in need fast enough, because they will ask for more and they want them faster. What they actually want you to do is just come in and fight the war for them, or bring your guys in to assist them, which, you know how that works. We get involved, we're just like, just get out of the way, we'll do this for you. That's just what we do. So it's kind of disingenuous to say they're not getting them fast enough. They're not getting them fast enough for their estimation, but it's still light years faster than what it usually takes most people to get stuff. End sidebar. It seems that the right weapons are just not getting there in time, and turning what could have been a very clear victory for Ukraine into a Russian advantage, a fumble on the 10-yard line by the West. Defense officials noted that it would take several months for those weapons to reach Ukrainian forces, specifically the Harpoon missile system, which will require which will require weeks to transfer the weapons and train the troops in their use. See, that's what I was talking about. Cross it off the list. Okay, we'll give you these, but it's going to take a long time to get them to you, and then we got to teach you how to use them, and then we got to teach you guys how to maintain the system. So there is some truth to that.
Well, it's funny you bring up the harpoons because, you know how you were speaking earlier of that Russian ship that they sank that you didn't know about?
Yeah.
Guess what they used to sink said ship?
I thought it was a Neptune.
No. They had announced that they had used harpoons.
Well, we haven't given it to them yet.
Apparently we have.
So, yeah, we just got Tom Clancy. Anyway, the truck-mounted Harpoon in this condition, in this configuration, is new, right? Defense official told reporters on June 15th. And that's why it's taking a little bit of time to pull the systems together for full operational capability. Ukrainian forces say that they need more weapons than their allies are sending them. The U.S. has pledged to continue coordinating with Ukrainian partners to ensure that the aid continues to reach the front lines, but could not comment on the specific timelines, because it's just not possible to give you a deadline. I mean, even if we said, look, we're sending you a flight of 400 C-130s full of this stuff, right? You can get them there in 48 hours. But it's still going to take you a month and a half to teach people how to use them, maintain them, reload them. Does your country have that time? Or can we send you something that's slightly less complicated that you can use within 24 hours? Like, I don't know, javelins, stuff like that, right? That's the conflict that's going on. This is the back and forth of negotiating arms shipments between governments.
During wartime.
During wartime, yeah, very good point. It's a very sticky situation.
Like, it takes years, like, to upgrade Taiwan's F-16s to the Viper configuration.
Yeah.
There's a 3 or 4 year negotiated process.
Plus, they
just
have to
to get
build the damn things.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's just to negotiate the deal.
Right.
It was 3 or 4 year process.
And then once you do, well, because that's about prices. That's about, I need this many planes delivered by this
When
many
can you
days.
bring them?
How can you fly them over? Yeah, ferrying.
How do you
sure.
get them there?
But then, because COVID, acquisition time, microchip shortage, wiring shortage, fuel shortage. There's that too, right? So that's an extra wrench that the monkey threw into the works. Anyway, let's see, where did I leave off? We are in constant communication with our Ukrainian counterparts discussing the evolving situation and their critical requirements. This came from Lieutenant Colonel Anton D. Semmelroth, DoD spokesman. This coordination and our support for Ukraine will continue. Yes, but will it be fast enough? Ukraine has also grappled with hesitation from its European allies regarding the delivery of lethal aid. Some European leaders, primarily Chancellor Olaf Scholz of Germany and President Emmanuel Macron of France, have pushed for Russia and Ukraine to end the war through peace talks rather than conflict. Germany, which initially delayed the delivery of lethal aid to Ukraine until 2 months into the invasion, has lagged significantly behind Ukraine's other allies in delivering any of its aid. Data from German think tank the Kiel Institute indicates Germany lags behind most allies, both in terms of the amount of aid promised and the amount actually delivered, amounting to roughly only 35% of its commitment. You could see the breaking in the ranks in the Europeans, Keane told John Roberts during America Reports. Fox News report here. You can see... You've got the UK, the Baltics, and Poland all in on Zelensky's side, which is what drives the Russians out of the territory. But then you've got the French and the Germans. They're just not there, he continues. Where they are is they want a ceasefire, go to negotiations as quickly as possible, end this thing as soon as possible. Any kind of stalemate like that favors the Russians dramatically. Keane also admitted that the U.S. might favor the peace talk approach, saying that the U.S., I think, was strongly in a little bit of both of that, to be frank. The indecision and decisiveness in target and commitment is something that Russia will look to exploit, as it presses its advantage to secure the Donbas region, while the Ukrainians fight with depleting resources and vastly inferior weapons. Russia is acutely aware of the lack of cohesion within NATO and among European governments regarding how far the West should go to support Ukraine. This came from Rebecca Koffler. She's president of the Doctrine and Strategy Consulting, and she's a former DIA intelligence officer. Moscow has been trying to fracture NATO and deepen the split between old Europe and new Europe for years by running covert intelligence operations and waging disinformation warfare. Sidebar. It is that very disinformation warfare and propaganda and their occupation of Crimea, which, me personally, I believe, is the one reason why Ukraine wasn't fast-tracked into NATO. Because somebody was like, I don't know. They've got some Russians in their country. Can we really trust them? They speak a similar language. They speak commie. So NATO's like, better err on the side of caution and just let them suffer.
Yeah, but couldn't you also say that about a certain Russian enclave that's within NATO? Kaliningrad?
Kaliningrad. That's like that little bit north in northeast Poland, right?
Yep.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that because as this begins to wind down, NATO and its allies are going to start to make demands about reparations in the fallout of Russians' guilt in a slew of war crimes, right? Don't be surprised if you don't see Poland demand that Kaliningrad be taken back by Poland.
I would not be surprised to see them take it back by force.
If necessary. But you see what I'm
Oh,
saying,
no.
right? Like,
They will roll in there with fucking tanks.
right. But what I'm saying is like, Russia rolls into Ukraine, a sovereign nation, gets categorically defeated, and as punishment, not only are they driven out of Ukraine, but they have to forfeit Kaliningrad, which was never really theirs in the first place. And then that also ensures Finland, Sweden, Norway, Estonia, Latvia, all NATO. You have just fortified the eastern flank of NATO because of one retarded, decrepit old Slavic Cold War bear and his jerk-off fantasy of bringing back 1961 global politics. One man has hardened the resolve of the entire eastern flank of NATO. I mean, if anything, we should thank him for that, I guess. But we gotta beat him first. Anyway, where did I leave off? Morgan Ortagus, a former State Department spokesman, argued that it is not a matter of timing, but of the right weapons reaching Ukraine. The dire straits of Ukraine's fighters find themselves in are not so much about delays in delivering the arms we've agreed to send. It's more that those arms aren't sufficient enough to tip the balance on the battlefield. Ortegas told, unfortunately, we and none more than the Ukrainians are learning how costly it can be when we fail to deter war. Right. You can't deter it because it's already begun. Right? It's like, I think Kolian Noir did a video about the Uvalde thing, and he was like, people need to stop talking about how to stop the event that had already started. It's like, this war is already happening. So instead of talking about deterring it, you should talk about how to win it, how to end it. Because apparently the world forgot how to fight a war to absolute victory. And right now, as near as anyone can tell, the only country in the world right now trying to fight a war to absolute victory is Russia. China hasn't begun their war in Taiwan. North Korea is just playing possum, and they're not starting any war yet, right? So they don't know what it's like to win one. Russia's the only country in the world right now fighting with the intention of winning. How does that work? The rest of the world forgot how to do it because we're being led by idiots. You're going to hear me use that phrase a lot. We are being led by idiots. Moving right along. Remember that story about the Iron Dome I was talking about earlier? There you go. A U.S. company is helping Ukraine build a missile defense system, its own version of Israel's Iron Dome, to prevent Russian rockets from striking its populace. According to Israeli officials, the Iron Dome, which detects and destroys incoming missiles, has an over 90% success rate. Ukraine's defense system, meanwhile, intercepts only 20% of Russia's missiles and rockets. Ukraine's technology is old and slow. I guess is their system called the Biden? Old and slow. Anyway, this came from the CEO of Just Answer, Andy Kurtzig. If we could close down the skies over Ukraine, then Ukrainians will have a much better chance of winning this war and of democracy winning out. Well, no shit, Captain Obvious. That's why they were asking for a no-fly zone since day one. Have we given it to them? No. When a missile is on its way, having a slow computer is just not very helpful, he added. The plan to modernize Ukraine's system, dubbed Sky Project, intends to create a mobile, all-weather air defense system designed to intercept and destroy rockets and artillery shells, protecting 8 regions of Ukraine, according to California-based Just Answer. The project is a joint initiative with the Lviv Military Administration and the Ukraine Air Command West, along with other partners, including the Software Association of Japan and many others. We're helping them upgrade their computer systems and their networking systems and software, he says. Ukraine can be much faster and much more accurate about attempting to swat down these incoming missiles from Russia. The war in Ukraine, nearing 4 months, has led to 10,094 civilian casualties in the country, with 44,509 killed and 5,585 injured, according to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, or OHCHR. You've heard me use that a lot. Most of these were from explosives like missiles or airstrikes. Part of Russia's strategy is to bomb the entire country and create fear and uncertainty and doubt among the Ukrainian people. We're just trying to swat down that strategy. Wasn't the Patriot missile system originally invented to do the exact same thing? Are
Yep.
we admitting that that's slow?
Well, it was also designed in the 70s.
Yeah, my dad designed it. Like, my dad worked in White Sands during the development of that. He got his last promotion because of that.
Patriot is still effective.
Right. As
It's
long as it's
like
in
the third.
The country.
Well, no, it's the third triad of the anti-ballistic missile shield.
Fine.
It's basically the low altitude part of the shield.
Okay, but I mean, what I'm saying is it would be far more effective if the Patriot systems were actually in country instead of parked on the border of Poland looking into the country, right? Because
yeah, they're not covering as much as they could be.
Right, their time on target's farther. And they're only going to fire those if they cross into Polish airspace, right? That's what they were there for. Of course they're ineffective then. Anyway, moving on. That's just actually a shorter story. I just wanted to post it about the Iron Dome because I think that's a wicked picture.
Yeah, you know what the problem with Iron Dome is?
Huh.
Look at the cost of the missile.
If it just saves one life, Scott.
It's like $200K
So?
per missile.
That's fine. Tomahawks cost $2 million a piece.
Yeah, but they're using, the Israelis are using these to shoot down fucking drones.
Fine.
Yeah, I think they might find a more cost-effective solution.
Sure.
Like, say,
just Moab your enemy. Right?
Well,
$70,000 as opposed to $2 million? I think it was 70,000. Maybe it was 270,000. Either way, it's way cheaper than a Tomahawk. Anyway, we'll get into that another time.
Tomahawks are overly expensive.
Yeah. Moabs are cooler anyway. And thank you to Dark Docs, who also does Dark 5, Dark Seas, Dark Skies. I saw
any of the darks.
Yeah. I saw a fascinating video this week about that. The Moab was designed by a Vietnamese woman who survived and escaped the Vietnam War. She was a refugee, and as a thank you for her refugee status and getting to America to be free of that war, she joined basically the Department of Defense, and she developed the Moab. How cool is that? She invented the thermobaric bomb. I think she did it in 60 days, too. It was fascinating. For those of you who haven't seen it, Dark Docs on YouTube. And watch the video about the Moab. Fascinating story. Awesome piece of history. What a time to be alive, man. We get these like really, really great stories in small snippets at the touch of our fingertips if you just know where to look. It's great shit. Moving on. I'm going to show you a flanker. Or fullback? Su-35. That's the fullback, right?
Yeah, that's the new one.
Well, this one ain't new. That's what's left of one. It's not a good look.
Well,
Not a good look. Anyway, Russia's Air Force has so far underperformed in Putin's invasion of Ukraine, helping even the battlefield for ground forces as the fighting shifts to the east 4 months into the war. This came from the British Defense Ministry. Its failure to consistently deliver air power is likely one of the most important factors behind Russia's very limited campaign successes. It cannot gain full air superiority and is operated in a risk-averse style, rarely penetrating deep behind Ukrainian lines. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy routinely pushed for a no-fly zone to be enforced by the US and NATO allies at the outset of the invasion, but has since abandoned those calls. I wonder why. Because manpads are working great, right? The US and NATO allies have sent billions in military aid to Ukraine over the past 4 months. The latest $700 million weapons package included more than 1,400 Stinger anti-aircraft systems. Yes, I said that like that on purpose. No, they're not by my CCI. As well as mobility, artillery, rocket systems, MARS, anti-armor weapons, helicopters, tactical vehicles, and other arms. Aside from Western support, the UK also blamed the Russian Air Force's lackluster performance on heavily scripted air combat training that is designed to impress senior officials rather than to develop dynamic initiative among air crews. So they're, what, the Russian version of the Blue Angels? Look how good they fly, comrade. It's like perfect platform, perfect. Look at that. They're just beautiful. Yeah, but they're not doing shit in combat. Doesn't matter. Look at formation. Awesome. They make new McStalin logo. Look at that. Sorry, I had to bring that back up. For those of you who don't know what McStalin is, go watch the beginning of last week's episode. Let's see. While Russia has an important roster of relatively modern and capable combat jets, the Air Force has almost certainly failed to develop the institutional culture and skill sets required for its personnel to meet Russia's aspiration of delivering a more Western-style modern air campaign. They have a plane called the Su-57, right?
Ah, yes, the one with the forward swept wings.
And the thrust vectoring super maneuverability
Oh, no,
thing?
the Su-57 is the new one. The Felon is the NATO has called it.
Yeah. That thing is bad ass. But
It's
I don't think they're flying them over Ukraine.
they're not.
It's like the T-14 Armada of the air, isn't it?
It's even worse. They have exactly 12 of them. They
Really
have not
awesome.
entered serial production.
Yeah.
They're highly overrated. They're calling it a fifth-generation aircraft, even though they're using fourth-generation engines.
Yes.
The front half of the aircraft is still riveted together, so they still have not mastered that smooth laminar skin like we did with the F-117.
That's really old tech, the F-117.
I know, but you know how there were no rivets on the F-117?
Yes.
On the skin.
Yes.
The Felon still uses rivets. Rivets are radar return.
Yeah.
The Indian government was originally involved in the Su-57 program. And they must have saw enough of the technical data package or enough technical data that said, fuck this, it ain't worth it. and they pulled out of it. That's why the Russians can't build them. They were expecting foreign customers to pay for the development.
So you're saying that they actually built this with sort of open source information because they wanted it to be an export model?
Not so much an export model. They wanted a partner who would basically pay for the development, and they get the benefit of the aircraft.
So as a
Because the
Kickstarter.
Russians, the Russians always, and you might be aware of this. There's always two versions of the aircraft.
Yeah.
There's the ones that the Russians have, which typically has the good shit in it for avionics, weapons packages, etc. And then there's the
Export
cheaper
model.
export model.
Yeah, it's the step down, so they would always have technical superiority.
Yep.
Yeah, but see, okay.
The Indians apparently have tracked the Su-57s
Yeah.
with their Su-30s,
The thing though
which are
is,
not exactly the most modern aircraft.
DCS does a very, very good job of modeling aircraft's full potential. Like you can tweak the pilot's capability of every model in DCS, but if you put it on ACE, it literally pushes the plane to its design limits. In
The theoretical design limit.
Yes. But
That's your key right there.
they're pretty amazing. Like, how do I don't want to use this as like case study or anything, right? But like, you know how the audience always challenges like Grim Reaper's people to, they stack the deck against them just to see how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
They did this challenge where there was 8 of them against 4 of those Su-57s, and they couldn't beat them. They just couldn't. Even with this numerical superiority, they were completely outclassed.
Because they're going off the theoretical.
Yeah.
Nobody has a real good idea of what its actual stealth capability is.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing. I'm kind of an aircraft buff, and those 2 giant fucking engines hanging out the ass end of it,
Yeah.
does not do much for its thermal signature.
No. Yeah, they're Roman candles. See, my warp
they've got a
plane
30-foot
prowess stops
flame
around
shooting out the
50s.
back. The Russians are great at designing an aircraft that is highly maneuverable. They suck when it comes to technology.
Making it invisible.
They suck. Well, they suck at high technology. Take any of their military developments. What
T-14.
are they good at?
They're pretty good at
They're
making
good
tanks.
Yes,
They're
but
very
even
good
their
at making
tanks,
helicopters.
not so much if you can be brought down with man pads. No, can they?
Well, okay, but that's... I meant the machine itself. Like, bad pilots flying too low or being too brash or whatever, that's men issues, right?
Mm-hmm. It's doctrinal. The Russians are good at mass producing something at a medium quality and trying to steamroll over your ass.
Because they got the numbers.
They had the numbers. They don't have the numbers anymore, as evidenced by Ukraine.
As evidenced by they can't afford to pay their soldiers.
Or replenish their smart weapons that they've pretty much expended all of.
Yeah.
That's why they've gone back to dropping iron bombs, because they don't have any precision guidance ordnance anymore. They've used it up. Which works in Ukraine's favor now, because now the Russians are going to get sloppy. They're going to go back to what they know.
Chemical weapons.
Well, no, I was going to say...
We've been talking about that for a while.
Mass artillery attacks on civilian populations.
Oh, yeah, scorched earth is just what they do.
Yeah. And that does not play well with the international crowd.
No, but you know who taught them that, right? Germans.
No, the Russians were good at that before the Germans taught them that.
Scorched earth doctrine was taught to them by Germans after Barbarossa.
Nah, scorched earth doctrine was taught to them by a little Frenchman.
Go on.
Napoleon.
Well, okay,
What do you think they did
modern
when
warfare though,
Napoleon?
or what
That
one
they've
would
always
consider.
resorted to scorched earth. Trust me.
Right, but I
Anytime they got
mean,
invaded,
Napoleon's time is like more like rape and pillage warfare, whereas I'm talking about modern warfare, or
what do you
what you would
think World
consider
War
that.
II was?
Wow, more boom,
Rape and pillage.
more
Come
boom
on,
though, a lot more boom.
a lot more boom, but a lot of rape and a lot of pillage.
All right, I gotta move on because these stories are taking forever to get through. I don't even remember where I left off. Uh, oh, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited Kyiv last week for the second time since the war broke out, pledging to support the Ukrainian army against Russia. All the evidence is that Putin's troops are under acute pressure themselves as they are taking heavy casualties. Their expenditure of munitions, of shells, and other weaponry is colossal. After our 114 days of attack on Ukraine, they have still not achieved the objectives that they originally set out for in the first week. General Sir Patrick Sanders, Chief of the British Army, also reiterated that the UK's support for Ukraine in a message to his troops this month. Russia's invasion of Ukraine underlines our core purpose to protect the UK and to be ready to fight and win wars on land, and reinforces the requirement to deter Russian aggression with the threat of force, he said in an internal message reviewed by the BBC. We are the generation that must prepare the army to fight in Europe once again. That is a bold statement. When is the last time the British military was ever thought of to be dangerous?
World War II.
Just before World War II, I would argue.
Yeah,
They got wiped the fuck out. Let's be honest. Like their flagship got wiped out in one shot. You know what I mean? It's like that was the beginning of the end of the empire right there. Actually, one could argue that the beginning of the end of
actually,
the empire was probably during like the African campaigns.
I was actually going to go back further.
Boer War?
Further.
Nah, I think it's going to be like 1880s, 1890s, honestly.
Where do they refer to as the graveyard of empires?
Oh, I know the answer to this. Afghanistan.
Hmm. That was their downfall right there.
That's where everyone's
That was the start
downfall
of it.
was.
Exactly.
Like everybody who goes there loses.
Exactly.
You would think the world would be like, fuck that place.
We spent 20 years there, and we were still getting shot at by freaking people with, what were
Martini
those?
Henrys,
Martini Henrys.
Khyber Pass weapons and stuff. Yeah. All right, let's go on because I hate to say this, but we're only halfway through.
Jesus.
Yeah, been busy. And keep in mind, like, what did I tell you before I left work? I was like, I have to do show prep. That's how diligent I was since I got home. All right, so now we're on to Tuesday, June 21st, day 118. That was all day 117's news. Anyway, I have this photo for you. Bink. It's not pretty to look at. Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Remember that guy? He was supposed to be a Supreme Court nominee. That didn't go so well, did it? Is making a surprise visit to Ukraine to throw America's weight behind arms trials against the Russian military. This is what the DOJ revealed Tuesday. Ukraine has reportedly opened roughly 16,000 investigations into alleged war crimes by Russian troops since Russian President Putin ordered the invasion back in February. Multiple nations and international organizations have also launched investigations into war crimes by Russia. Attorney General Merrick Garland is making an unannounced visit to Ukraine today, which would have been Tuesday, where he will meet with Ukrainian Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova to discuss U.S. and international efforts to help Ukraine identify, apprehend, and prosecute those individuals involved in war crimes and other atrocities in Ukraine. The International Criminal Court opened its largest investigation ever into alleged war crimes in late May. The ICC is working in a joint investigation team alongside Ukrainian, Polish, and Lithuanian prosecutors. Or sorry, that was the end of the thing. The European Union's legal branch, Eurojust, is also participating in the effort. The UN Human Rights Council also opened an inquiry into alleged Russian war crimes in mid-May. The HRC held a special session to address Ukraine's allegations that Russian troops had committed atrocities against civilians during their withdrawal from the area surrounding Kyiv. The HRC voted 33-2 in favor of opening the inquiry, with 12 abstentions. China and Eritrea were the only nations to vote against the measure. War crime allegations arose after the Russian withdrawal from Kyiv revealed that Bucha, a town in the area, saw Russian troops kill as many as 400 citizens and force others to dig mass graves. The US, UK, and other NATO allies have denounced Russian President Vladimir Putin as a war criminal. President Joe Biden called for Putin to face a war crime trial in early April. This guy's brutal. What is happening in Bucha is outrageous, and everyone has seen it. I think it's a war crime, Biden said at the time, adding that the U.S. needs to get all the details so this can be an actual war crime trial. You see, Joe, you're wrong. To get an actual war crime trial, you need Spencer Tracy. Because I've seen the movie Judgment at Nuremberg, and that is what a war crime trial looks like. And he played a brilliant role in the movie. You don't want that. You want this to go on and on and on so you can keep fencing money in and out of this country for whatever you want, rather than what the people in this country need, which would be, oh, I don't know, energy independence, and no inflation, and no excuses about why you've left the border wide open. But I digress. Let's move on, because we got to get through these quickly. That's just not happening. All right, next one is this guy. Some of you may know him. Most of you probably don't. The State Department is confirming the death of one Stephen Zabielski, an American who was fighting in Ukraine and reportedly killed on May 15th in the southern region of the country. Zabielski is 52 years old, and he's the latest American national confirmed dead in Ukraine since the invasion began. He was killed in a battle while engaging with Russian forces in a small southern village, according to an obituary in the Recorder, his local newspaper. Well, of course they're going to say that, because they have to make you look good. You don't speak ill of the dead. Sorry. The State Department has reportedly been in contact with Zabielski's family to offer assistance, but no further information has been made available to the public. As of yet, the exact circumstances of his death and the location of his body is unknown. We can confirm the death of U.S. citizen Stephen Zabielski in Ukraine, a State Department spokesman had been quoted in their interview. We have been in touch with the family and have provided all possible consular assistance. Out of respect to the family during this difficult time, we don't have anything further. The State Department also took the opportunity to reiterate its position to U.S. citizens traveling to Ukraine or participating in the conflict. The spokesperson added, "We once again reiterate U.S. citizens should not travel to Ukraine due to the armed conflict that is active in the country, and the singling out of U.S. citizens in Ukraine by Russian government security officials, and that U.S. citizens in Ukraine should depart immediately if it's safe to do so using any commercial or other privately available ground transportation options." So they want to help, they want to send gear, but they don't want you going. Why is that? Is it because they don't want to have to come bail you out if you get caught or killed? Or rather, is it because they don't want people from here to go there and then tell you everything they have seen, or what they haven't seen, or what they haven't received that the country has been asking for months? Moving right along. All right, so we're still on Tuesday, but this is the last of Tuesday. Here we go. Some of you may recognize that face. I forgot his name right away, but it's probably in the story. Oh, it's not. All right. I forgot his name. He's the Russian ambassador. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who, by the way, was just recently named as an assassination target by Iran, I think, a couple days ago. Out of the blue. Whatever. Anyway, he argued on Tuesday that the U.S. has lost deterrence due to the Biden administration's foreign policy blunders, as 2 other Americans captured by Russian forces may face the death penalty for supporting Ukraine. Some of you may recall that last week I showed you the photos of those 2 men. They're both Army, or military, I won't say Army, I think they're Army, veterans, both from the state of Alabama. One's an Asian guy from Alabama. Anyway, Mike Pompeo is quoted as saying, "This is breathtaking. This is why leadership matters. You know, we find ourselves in this terrible place. The Ukrainians find themselves in this terrible place because the United States has lost deterrence. It lost the capacity for the President and the Secretary of State to talk with its Russian counterparts and to make absolutely clear what the real cost for doing things that Americans cared about in protecting American interests." And these death sentences on these 2 Americans, these 2 folks who served in the U.S. military, are just another example of the incapacity of this administration to do that. We, of course, have leverage. We, of course, have tools that we can use. I'm not convinced that this administration is prepared to use them in any serious way to restore the deterrence that would have prevented them from even making these statements, let alone carrying out these potential murders. That's some pretty heavy-handed words. I mean, he's saying in a ton of words, we're being led by idiots. How else can you say it, right? He's just more eloquent in his delivery. That's why he was Secretary of State, and I'm not. Because he has the gift of gab. Actually, no, he has the silver tongue of gab. I have the iron fist. Moving on. Wednesday. We're almost done, guys, I promise. Wednesday, June 22nd, day 119. Let's get through these quickly as possible. Here you go. This is at his actual funeral, by the way, this photo. A photojournalist and a soldier who were killed by Russian forces in Ukraine were found to be coldly executed. Max Levin and serviceman Alexei Chernyshov, both Ukrainian, were killed by Russian forces weeks after the invasion started, but new details about where their bodies were discovered suggest that they were executed. This came from Reporters Without Borders. Levin's body was found face down lying in the dirt, with a single bullet buried in the soil several inches below his face. He was probably killed with 1, maybe 2 bullets, fired at close range when he was already face down on the ground, the group determined. Levin's clothes and a media helmet were found nearby, which means they stripped him down before they executed him.
Mm-hmm.
Chernyshov's body...
They didn't want him to be identified.
Probably. Chernyshov's body was burned and discovered near empty jerry cans of gasoline. So they Hitler outside of the Führer bunkered that guy.
Yep.
Yeah. These findings
Wonder where they learned that.
I told you, it's the Germans.
The Germans?
The Germans. Anyway, these findings show that the 2 men were doubtlessly coldly executed. Their bodies were initially found on April 1st near the village of, oh my god, I've never read this one before. Village, I don't know how to pronounce this one. Huta Mezhirska. Wow, I got it. North of Kiev. They were last heard from on March 13th, days after Levin reported being under fire from Russian soldiers on March 10th. A funeral was held for Levin on April 4th, 2022, in Kiev. Reporters Without Borders clarified that they were unable to confirm whether the bodies had been autopsied. I'm sorry. Do you need an autopsy when you found the body face down, naked, with bullet holes in the back of their head, and the bullets themselves found in the ground several inches below them? Pretty sure an autopsy won't be necessary. The guy burned to death? Different story. Fire does strange things to the human body. For those of you
They may want to determine if he was alive when he was lit on fire, too.
Ew. I'd rather not think about that. For those of you who don't know, even psychologists and psychiatrists have to go through residency, and sometimes residency isn't even parts of things that you're supposed to be doing when you go into your own practice. And so when I did mine, I actually volunteered for the mortuary. So I've seen some things, and I've seen what the human body looks like after a house fire. And let's just say sometimes even human bones can burst like sausages in the microwave. So maybe an autopsy on that guy. But if there's nothing left, what's the point? Moving on. While some of you are probably eating hot dogs and sausages for dinner, I apologize. You gotta remember, the guy I worked under, he did the cliche thing of dropping his ham sandwich on the body of the guy he was working on and trying to freak me out. And I was just like, you gonna finish that? Anyway, now we're into Thursday, June 23rd, day 120. And before Scott's and my sinuses completely give out, we're gonna try to get you through this. God, I hate getting old. Okay, this guy here, who, in all honesty, he looks pretty young for a guy with as many years' experience as they claim he's got. Very young, actually. Almost like this must be bullshit. But if he's got it, he's got it. Whatever. Maybe he uses a lot of hair product and facial cream. Not that I know anything about that, as I wear a clay mask. Sorry. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy called for a, quote, fair tribunal in a Nuremberg-style trial. I told you need Spencer Tracy for that. To hold Russia accountable for war crimes in a late-night address Wednesday. Just as September 1st, 1939 and June 22nd, 1941 ended in Nuremberg trials, January 24th, 2022 must end in a fair tribunal. Russia must be held accountable for all the evil it has brought to Ukraine, Zelenskyy said in what has become his regular nightly address to his people since Russia invaded 4 months ago. Zelensky's comment came just one day after Attorney General Merrick Garland visited Ukraine and announced that the U.S. would not only support the ICC investigations into Russian war crimes, but would also assist by launching its own probe. The United States stands in solidarity with the people of Ukraine and in the face of Russia's continued aggression and assault on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. This came from Merrick Garland. America and the world has just seen the many horrific images and read the heart-wrenching accounts of brutality and death that have resulted from Russia's unjust invasion of Ukraine. Garland said that the DOJ will create a war crimes accountability team to investigate and hold accountable those who have committed war crimes and human rights violations. Zelenskyy championed the U.S. efforts to independently investigate Russian war crimes and said that the probe will be one of the largest contributions to the protection of international law and order of our crime. Garland appointed Eli Rosenbaum, that guy, to serve as the Counselor for War Crimes Accountability following his lengthy career in identifying and deporting Nazi war criminals. Look at the picture of that guy. He did that? Really? Rosenbaum is a 36-year veteran of the DOJ, which means this guy's like Nosferatu because he looks like he's only 40 years old. Anyway, served as the director of the Office of Special Investigations and oversaw the criminal division in the department that investigated and prosecuted cases involving Nazi criminals. Rosenbaum will now coordinate efforts across the DOJ and federal government to hold accountable those who have committed war crimes in Ukraine. There is no hiding place for war criminals. The U.S. Justice Department will pursue every avenue of accountability for those who commit war crimes and other atrocities in Ukraine, Garland said. Working alongside with our domestic and international partners, the DOJ will be relentless in our efforts to hold accountability for every person complicit in the commission of war crimes, torture, and other grave violations during the unprovoked conflict in Ukraine. Okay, so the last part was word salad. But his intentions are good, I guess. Moving on. Ooh, yeah, this is a good one. Because I got that picture. That's like an action shot. The U.S. will send another $450 million in military aid to Ukraine, including some additional medium-range rocket systems. Yeah. The latest package will include a number of high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, which is what that is. And it's built off of an armored LMTV from the looks of it. See, Squib would like that one. And is expected to be announced later Thursday. The initial 4 HIMARS that the U.S. sent have already gone into Ukraine and are in the hands of troops there. The package will also include ammunition and other supplies. The new aid comes just a week after the U.S. announced that it will send $1 billion in military aid to Ukraine, and as the Russian military continues to slowly expand its control in the eastern Donbas region. Ukrainian leaders have persistently asked for the more advanced precision rocket systems in order to better fight back against Russia. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity to provide details ahead of an announcement. Ooh, sentences are clearing. The Russian military captured 2 villages in eastern Ukraine on Thursday and is fighting for control of a key city or a key highway in a campaign to cut supply lines and encircle frontline Ukrainian forces, according to British and Ukrainian military officials. Russian forces have been bombarding the city of Sibirozenesk for weeks with artillery and air raids, and fought the Ukrainian army house to house. The HIMARS gives Ukraine the ability to strike Russian forces and weapons from further away. These systems are mounted on trucks, which carry a container with 6 precision-guided rockets that can travel about 45 miles. It took about 3 weeks to train Ukrainian troops on the first 4 HIMARS before they were moved into the fight. The aid is part of the $40 billion in security and economic assistance passed last month by Congress and signed into law by President Joe Biden. Because Corn Pop's a bad dude. Overall, since the war began in late February, the U.S. has committed more than $6 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, including this latest package. The latest $450 million will be from Drawdown Authority, which means that the Defense Department will take weapons and equipment from its own stock to ship them to Ukraine. So this isn't reserve stuff. This is just active stock. They're like, yeah, okay, we can do without this. Go ahead and send it over there. That kind of thing. So, we are 1 hour and 44 minutes into this, and I am happy to tell you we have made it to today, Friday, day 121. And there's only 3 stories left. So we're going to make it to 2 hours. So we only went twice as long as I had planned. Sorry. But we always seem to go 2 hours. Except that one time we went 3. How the hell did we make it through that one? God.
No, we had one that was under an hour.
Yeah, But I mean, like, that one that went over 3 hours, Jesus, that was a long night. Anyway. Oh, I gotta put the picture up. Sorry. Here you go. So this is a map of the area around Sibirozenesk. Red, occupied, green, clear. Obviously under contention. And you can sort of see what they're going to do next. I suspect that Borivsky will probably be next to fall. And Privila. Ukrainian forces are retreating from the besieged eastern city of Sibirozenesk after weeks of fierce and bloody battles. This came from Luhansk Governor Serhiy Haidai today, Friday. Russian troops have been relentlessly bombarding the city, which is the administrative center of the Luhansk region, and the Ukrainians are retreating to avoid being encircled. Russia controls about 95% of the Luhansk province and around 50% of the neighboring Donetsk province. Both are in the disputed Donbas region. Haidai said that the defenders will continue fighting from new positions after the retreat, so it's a tactical retreat. They're going to fall back lines, kind of a thing. The Ukrainians had fought Russians on the streets of the city before holding up in a chemical factory. In Mariupol, the last remaining Ukrainian fighters before the city was taken by Russia had hidden inside the Azovstal steel plant before being removed and taken away as prisoners of war back in May. Russian troops have made gains in Sibirozenesk and neighboring Lysychansk as it wears down Ukrainians' resistance. We will have to pull back our guys, Haidai was saying. It makes no sense to stay at the destroyed positions because the numbers of casualties in poorly fortified areas would grow every day. Sensible. Russia's defense ministry claimed Friday that it had fully blocked 4 Ukrainian battalions and a foreign mercenary unit, around 2,000 soldiers south of Lysychansk. Haidai said that the Russians were also advancing towards Lysychansk from Zolot and Toshkivka, adding that Russian reconnaissance units conducted forays on the city edges but were driven out by its defenders. You can sort of see all those in that picture there, by the way, the names of these cities I'm talking about. Russia invaded Ukraine in what it called a, quote, special military operation 4 months ago on February 24th, and has more recently shifted its focus to the Donbas region following its failure to capture the country's capital of Kyiv. US and allied leaders have made visits to Kyiv to meet with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy in a show of support. The leaders of France, Italy, Germany, and Poland visited last week, and the US and its allies continue to support the country with military aid. Moving right along. Here we go. I called this picture Butt Hurt. Russian ambassador to the United States, Anatoly Antonov, was reportedly overheard at Washington, D.C.'s Cafe Milano, complaining about a complete lack of respect toward his nation. That's why I called it butthurt. Antonov was photographed sitting for dinner with former U.S. envoy to Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, and CEO of the Center for the National Interest, Dmitry Simes. The 3 officials were allegedly engaged in a discussion on the conflict in Ukraine, according to the Politico journalist who took this photo. Antonov reportedly expressed deep confusion on American support for Ukrainian resistance forces. The ambassador mentioned both the trend of neo-Nazism in the Ukrainian military and politics. Boy, is he drinking the Kool-Aid.
He's paid to.
Yeah. Well, he's probably under threat to.
You
have a lot of Jewish guys in the United States. Actually, we have a Jewish turtle in the chat. Anyway, why are they so tolerant of what's happening in Kyiv, Antonov reportedly asked Khalilzad. The ambassador reportedly expressed to his dinner companions that Russia did not get enough consideration internationally, adding that the country would like to see a gesture of respect from DC. Politico's clandestine reporting was intensely scrutinized by Symes, who claimed that the publication did not even understand what the conversation was about. Symes also went on to criticize the report for being based on notes taken far from the table. It is clear to me that you did not even understand what the conversation was all about. Indeed, you were not close enough to hear the conversation sufficiently well enough to be able to report it objectively. Come on, man. We have those sonic ear microphone things. They probably heard you word for word. Ukrainian forces are retreating from the besieged city of Sibirozenesk after weeks of a fierce, bloody battle, Luhansk Governor Serhiy Haidai said on Friday. Russian troops have been relentlessly bombarding the city, which is the administrative center of the Luhansk region, and the Ukrainians are retreating to avoid encirclement. Here's part of that kind of overlapping stories thing. Russia controls 95% of the Luhansk province, with about 50% in the neighboring Donetsk province. Both are in the disputed Donbas region. There's the overlap. And if you made it this far, I'm glad to say that this is the last story of the day, and probably the coolest picture. There we go. You guys, we all made it. Like, I'm just wiped out tired. You can hear me stumbling through this. 2 Ukrainian Air Force fighter pilots traveled from the front lines in the war against Russia to Washington, D.C. this week to press Congress on the importance of supplying them with urgently needed equipment, including at least 4th-generation warplanes. The 2 pilots, who were identified only by their call signs, Juice and Moonfish, how cool is that? For their protection, told the news that they sat down with lawmakers in a closed-door meeting Thursday to detail what is needed in the immediate and intermediary senses. They're sending their attack jets and helicopters at low altitudes through the front lines to attack our warfighters in the trenches, Juice explained. We need to react. We need to intercept them. We need to save the lives of our citizens and ground troops. Sidebar. He's saying that these guys are going on strafing missions near treetop level to attack guys in trenches. That is exactly why we're sending manpads. That's exactly why we sent them. They must be working. Anyway. Juice, whose squadron gained notoriety in the early days of the war, as they took to the sky to defend Kyiv, said air defense is the #1 priority for Ukraine's fighters. The pilot said first and foremost, Ukrainian fighters on the ground and in the sky are more advanced, or need more advanced surveillance and response systems to counter and detect the barrage of Russian missile fire. My dogs are going crazy all of a sudden. Anyway, if you hear it, sorry. The pair listed a range of defenses they spoke to lawmakers about, though the news is withholding the details of the systems at the request of the officials involving the talks. The U.S. has supplied Ukraine with an array of heavy artillery like howitzers, javelins, and Stinger missiles to help resistance fighters fend off Russian advances. But Juice says this is not enough. Of course it's not. Air defense is pretty immediate, but it depends on a mutual level of air defense. It is very effective for its role, but we need some simple, next-level air defense. Ukrainian leaders have pleaded with the U.S. and other NATO nations for months to supply them with modern warplanes, including F-16s and F-15s. The Biden administration has refused to send Ukraine warplanes over concerns that it would, quote, escalate tensions with Russia. Gives a shit. Anyway, however, as the war continues for the 4th month and billions of dollars in U.S. defensive aid continues to pour into Ukraine, fighters on the front lines argue warplanes are also needed to adequately take on Russia to end the costly war. Sidebar. This is a big one, okay? There's a thing known as return on investment. You all have heard it. We're all adults here. You've all heard this saying before. Don't you think it's time we start sending these guys what they need to win rather than just to maintain? Because let me put it to you this way. If Ukraine loses and Ukraine falls and goes back under the Iron Curtain of Russia, what do you think the American taxpayer is going to say when they realized how many tens of billions of dollars we spent on a team that didn't win? Further proving that we have forgotten how to fight a war to victory. How intolerant will the American taxpayer be if we sent billions in military aid to a team that loses when we could have sent them what they asked for and maybe won faster at a lower cost rather than dragging this out for years at a higher cost? Think about that. Anyway, let's see. Where did I leave off? Alaskan Republican Senator Dan Sullivan, who led the Thursday meeting with a group of roughly 10 bipartisan lawmakers, including Senators Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, Roger Wickers from Mississippi, Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, Rob Portman from Ohio, Jim Risch from Idaho, and Illinois Democrats, Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin, said that this hesitancy doesn't exist so much in Congress. I believe that they should have the weapon systems that they believe they need to win, and it's not terribly useful for us to be second-guessing that. The senator acknowledged that the Ukrainian pilots would need to be trained up on fourth-generation warplanes, though the Ukrainian pilots believe this could be completed in an expedited fashion over a 3 to 6 month period. Why don't we just send them DCS World and a bunch of freaking, Wing Technologies control sticks and let them start practicing right now? Just a thought. I know it's not the same, but just saying. It's better than nothing. The senator acknowledged that the Ukrainian pilots would need to be trained up. Oh, I already said that part. Sorry. Sullivan, who called the meeting powerful, said senators will not only work to ensure Kyiv gets what it needs in the immediate sense, but said that they will also press the case with the administration and Pentagon when it comes to supplying Ukrainian soldiers with modern warplanes. These guys came off the front lines, and they're going back. They'll be fighting probably Monday, he said. It adds a little more poignancy and credibility to what they're seeking. Ukrainian pilots have relied heavily on Soviet-era MiG-29 planes, but the dated aircraft do not have the technological advances needed in modern warfare. If you're engaging with a Russian fighter face-to-face, I wouldn't even find him on the radar screen by the time he's already launched his missiles, Juice explained. It's almost a suicide mission to try to intercept them. Despite the immediate danger, Juice, Moonfish, and their fellow pilots face in the cockpit, they continue to return to the sky to engage with Russian sorties. The modern era of war is a war of numbers, of distances, of ranges, of kill ratios, and our kill ratio is not enough to be effective, he added. Our air defense and ground defense have proven capable and effective against them. That's why they've suffered great losses so far at the start of this war. But our ground defense is not able to cover all of the country. It's not so mobile as our fighter jets need to be. You need both, he urged. Today is 4 months to the day that this began. And with that, I'm going to play this. And I'm going to thank all of you, including Scott, my panelist, and you, the audience, for gritting your teeth and putting up with me for 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 30 seconds. So if you're new to my channel, welcome. But if you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, maybe check out my other playlists and see if my other interests might be of interest to you. Yes, I've done a lot of penny arcades lately. It's only because the last 2 months have had a lot of releases and I've got a lot more coming. But I've got some This Old Gats going on too. And I've got some tinkering videos about to happen too. So anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. This was The War Room. This was Day 121. We'll be back next week. Slava Ukraini. We'll see you later.